But Benny, here's a situation again where we see a guy like Josh Hawley being, protested, quote unquote, really mobbed by a group of Antifa radicals showing up at his house. Everything looks quiet here, but based on what we've seen in the past, after the RNC, other examples of Democrats and Antifa committing violence on Republicans here, there's real concern. Now, if this were a young Democrat member of Congress, every single Democrat on television today would be talking about this. Republicans don't. They don't make as big of an issue of this stuff as I think they should.
Right. So I'm going to stop playing their games. Their games are me using the language that they want me to use to describe them. They are not Antifa. They are not anti-fascists. They are the closest thing America has to actual fascism. Going to somebody's house with their small child inside of it and threatening the people inside of that house because you do not agree with their freedom of speech is fascism. Threatening violence is fascism. Killing your political opponents in the street is fascism. They did this to Tucker Carlson. They've done this to dozens of members of the House GOP. They do this to people who are out dining with their families and threatening children. I have children. These are tactics of actual fascists. The closest thing in America to fascism is Antifa. And so I'm going to call them what they are. They are absolute fascists and domestic terrorists, and that's precisely what they should be referred to. No longer will I call them Antifa. They are literal fascists, and doing this is sick. Disagree with people as much as you want, but in this country, we settle things legally and we settle things nonviolently, and this kind of behavior is absolutely sick. And I would call on anyone who is a reasonable person, especially my other panelists on this panel, to denounce Antifa.
And I'm sure Robin will. I know he will. He always does. And that's why we have him on here, because he is a common sense Democrat who actually listens to reason sometimes. But Robin, you know as well that every single Democrat will be calling on Republicans if the shoe were on the other foot to denounce what happened at Josh Hawley's house. But again, Republicans don't do this. And I know you denounce this type of violence, but why don't we hear more Democrats coming out publicly and saying this shouldn't happen?
My question is anyone really tracking that Nancy Pelosi's house?
We did. We covered that.
Vandalized?
But also Mitch McConnell's house was vandalized. And that comes on the heels of Mitch McConnell being accosted at a restaurant. And Sarah Huckabee Sanders being accosted at a restaurant.
I denounce it. That's the thing.
And Robin does. And Robin does.
And I've denounced Antifa time and time again. I've called them domestic terrorists on primetime television, so I have no problem doing that. And I've brought up the fact that Nancy Pelosi herself did. It's just people don't seem to remember because it's been 3 years. I think she needs to do it again, honestly.
And that's the thing, too. And I give Democrats credit for this, Benny, because they don't shut up until they get what they want, a denouncement of this type of violence. Donald Trump's done it 50 times publicly when it comes to white supremacists. You don't hear Democrats. And Robin said it. It's been 3 years since Nancy Pelosi has denounced Antifa.
That's right. That's right. So how many more people have to die? I mean, that's the question. How many more people need to actually... Antifa has killed people. They have killed Trump supporters in the street. We know them. We know their names. It has been covered. So at what point do we say, in one unified voice, we denounce these tactics and we are going to join together to make sure that there is no political violence? I am perfectly happy denouncing any type of behavior like this on the side of the right, on the side of conservatism. It rarely ever happens. But right now you're watching National Guard being deployed to Washington, D.C. for a peaceful protest of conservatives. And it's the abject hypocrisy of this type of mentality is what tears the country apart. And it really does make for safer places for us to live. I live in Washington, D.C. There have been multiple homicides on my street having nothing to do with politics, having to do with the gangland terrorism that occurs on Washington, D.C. streets every week. And you don't see the National Guard being deployed to my street.
No.
And so,
but we talked about, too, Atlanta's another example of that, where Robin lives, unprecedented violence in that city this year as well, or last year, I should say, and likely to continue this year, unfortunately. Robin, Benny, thanks so much. An important conversation. We appreciate your candor, both of you, on this. All right.